Okay, so today we're going to be talking about lean software development, what it is and why it's important for us. So we'll go through the agenda thing. So we'll talk about Agile Fluency Model first of all. So this is like a model that will allow us to see where we are in the continuum of tools and techniques. We'll have a little discussion about where we think we are on that, and hopefully we will go on and talk about some lean afterwards. Now, lean's a very big topic, so we'll give a cursory glance over the kind of most important bits, then specifically about how lean applies to software development, and then there's a whole set of tools that come out of lean software development. We can talk about which ones are appropriate for us. So this is the Agile Fluency Model. Diana Larson and James Shaw built this model. Now, I've looked at a lot of models for Agile Fluency or maturity and the like, and this is the one that I've liked the most because it reflects the real world experience that I've had as a coach. Now, we'll flip onto this because this is not great in size, but I just kind of want to talk through the flow and where we are in it. So I actually first saw this. Martin Fowler actually was the person that said, "Hey, this is pretty good. Take a look." So pre-agile, it says, I'll read it out because you can't see it. Invest in full-time team members, a workspace, business representation, team coaching, and management training. So if you think back 4 months ago, it's pretty much where we were. We didn't have a space, we didn't have a team. So it recommends at this stage that you start with the agile fundamentals of basic Scrum and Kanban. And we'll talk about those in particular in a second. So it's team culture, it's an agile mindset, and it's seeing progress from the business perspective. So now we've got a product owner who represent the business working directly with the team. The next step is shifting team skills. And this is probably where I think we're just kind of arriving now, and that's DevOps and extreme programming. So once you've got Scrum set up, looking at your technical practices, looking at getting that code through the system, pairing, all this kind of stuff. So that's the next step, that technical hygiene. So you're delivering, you're able to release a wheel, you're able to put code out, you're building, you're working as a team. The next step is going to be kind of difficult for us. So this is where I think we're actually at the edge of what we can achieve as a team. But some of these tools are definitely stuff that we should be interested in. And that's moving to an optimizing. Now, the four kind of things here are lean startup, lean software development, design thinking, and beyond budgeting. Now, this is saying that this is the promise of Agile. Once you become this responsive and you optimize your mechanics of operation and your culture and the way the team works, that you'll be able to really see the benefits. The next step after that is complexity, organizational design, and this is the strengthening phase. Now, this is an organizational wide piece, so this is not something that we can directly build, but if we can get to this stage, the business would feel the need to develop further. The interesting thing I think about this slide is the timelines. 2 to 6 months for Scrum and Kanban. After that, ops pipeline, up to 2 years. So that's 2 years for people working in legacy environments with legacy code that are stuck on that stack. So we've got a bit of a clean sheet here. So I think, a couple of months here, 3 months there, we're kind of in that ballpark already. If we were to say exactly where on the edge we are, brings us that. We're still in this zone. I mean, that's where we are. We haven't finished this step, but I guess I'd like to kind of say, well, we're doing this stuff. What's next? Just to start planting a seed, because I don't believe we'll do this straight away. I think this is something that we can aspire to. The next step is longer. It's years of effort. So I think that timeline for me, I thought, coming to this model from Cole, do you think it's pretty close to our experience, which is good because it kind of validates that it's useful for us. So I've kind of blown up those skills into a sort of easier to read slide. So I'm going to ask you guys, put your hand up and keep it up if you think we're doing Scrum or you know about Scrum.
I've done Scrum, but we're kind of not quite there.
We're not quite there. So I think a lot of this, we won't be quite there, but for me, this is about just knowledge at this stage. You kind of know what it is, because being very good at Scrum will bleed into a lot of the future stuff. Kanban, do we know about Kanban?
I love Kanban.
Right, so we're kind of doing Kanban at the moment. We have a board, we start talking about work in progress, hoping to measure cycle time as our stats get clearer. Extreme programming, yep. So that's good to know. Srini, are you okay with extreme programming? Because certainly that's something I was worried that we maybe haven't covered in too much detail, but certainly for me, I'd say extreme programming is basically Scrum with technical practice. We can talk explicitly about that, but DevOps kind of bleeds into that technical practice too, TDD, refactoring. Okay, your arms will be getting tired. You can put them down now. So that's good if everyone's hands up for most of that, because I think we're all aligned about where we think we are. We can definitely do refreshers and all this stuff. So I'm not to say that we're nailing it or we can't delve deeper into it, and I'm happy to kind of delve deeper if there's a desire to do so. The next 4, I would say, I've changed the order slightly, but lean software development is something that we can do with the team. Design thinking is on the roadmap for us as an organisation, as for an individual team. And I've talked to Zoe in Sydney. She's kindly agreed to fly up in February to give us an all-day design thinking HCD workshop. So we'll just try and clear some of that. So that's, after that, lean startup is probably requires some organisational support. That idea of MVP, of spinning up small things, validating that they work. We're not quite there yet, so not too worried about it. Beyond budgeting, we're nowhere near. It's not something for the team. Beyond budgeting is about rolling wave planning. It's the end of the yearly budgeting cycle. And that's,
like that,
yeah, that's not really something for us. But there's a good book implementing beyond budgeting by Bart Bionis, who did this work at what was Statoil. So if you want to know about it. And then down here, we are into really future cutting edge stuff. Complexity theory, organizational design theory, and governance structures. So this, we're talking about teal organizations, if you've read Frederick Laloux's Reinventing Organization books, Zappos, Valve, companies like that, really flat structures, really breaking the mold. So that's a long way away for us, but this is a doable step. So what do we know about lean? So maybe I'll ask anyone to shout out anything. What do you know about lean? Yeah.
Isn't it the total elimination of waste? Was the classic sort of statement what Toyota got?
Yeah, absolutely. Toyota, there's another one. Yeah. Anyone else?
In 3G.
3G?
Was it 3M?
3M. 3M. Yes, we'll get to 3M. Anything else? Well done.
The waste thing is pretty much
waste.
Yeah,
These are 7 principles.
Well, and the continuous evaluation.
Cool. So we won't go super far, but I mean these are things that come up often. Yeah. So Japan, Toyota, Canvas, Kanban manufacturing. So lean, just a bit of a history lesson. Does anyone know what the model of car is? Model T. Even though
Toyota.
Well, the lean really starts with Ford.
Yeah.
At the Highland Park plant back in 1913, they took waste out. I mean that was the real thing, and the Toyota were inspired by Ford, but it didn't really happen straight away. So Ford came unstuck eventually because they were very good at optimizing and removing waste, but they couldn't change. That's right. And this is W. Edwards Denning, who's any Agile presentation you'll see might have a quote from him. This is my favourite one. You might hear me saying this.
It's classic.
A bad system will beat a good person every time. There's certainly, if we do some work in Lean, there's some games we can play that demonstrate this theory in action. It's pretty good. There's one about red balls and white balls. It's a great thing. Other good quotes from him included, "In God we trust, but everyone else must bring data." So he's a funny man, but he went to Japan in the Second World War. He was a statistician by training. He helped them do some census work, and they liked his ideas and approaches. He was invited back by some of the companies to give some talks to management of the rebuilding economy of Japan, and they liked it. They took his ideas on and ran with them. That was in the 50s. It wasn't until the 80s that the Americans understood the impact of his ideas. The Japanese had actually been using his American ideas from the start. The next step is Toyota, so this is Taiji Ono. The word Lean itself comes from the book The Machine That Changed the World. Before that, there was various descriptions of it, but that's where that word Lean was used. Taiji Ono, lots of stories about Taiji Ono over the years. One of the things I particularly liked about him was the idea that the managers who ran the company had to be able to get stuck in. They weren't far removed, so this talk is about, that's often about Gemba, going to the place where the work is done. He was very obsessive about managers should go to where the work is done to see what's happening, to understand it. So, what's it about? I didn't want to put the Toyota House of Lean up, but this encapsulates a lot of it. Removal of waste is nearly everything. Value add, automation, so you might see this as JIDAKA. Quality is about removing waste. Flow, that's about removing waste. Constant improvement, removing waste. But very importantly, it's also about deep respect for people. So part of this concept of removing waste is if we respect people and their talents, we don't want them wasting their time. When Toyota skilled up and changed everything around, they told the people, we'll look after you. You know, they didn't say, we're becoming more efficient, you're all out the door. It was, we'll find useful work for you because we're going to leverage there's no incentive to make things lean if you're going to do yourself out of the job. So they look after their people. It's a bit sensitive, sorry. So the 3 M's of lean. So this is probably where 3M got their name from. So I've got this weird, confusing graph on purpose because this is a brilliant description of the 3 M's, but it does take some kind of deciphering. So the line really is idealized output, and this is what we would consider bad output, so or throughput or pieces of work in the system. So could we guess what Muri would be? Could you give a description of Muri?
Yeah.
So what would Muri be?
Waterfall.
Well,
It's like backed up work.
backed up work.
Batch stuff, right?
Big, so this is how much work we can do.
Yeah.
So this is what we call overburden.
Right.
Yep, too much work coming in.
Release cycles,
Big release.
big bangs, all those other
Big batches going through the system.
Risk building up.
That's it. So Muri is overburden, and for this it's about streamlining demand. Yeah, like being able to respond to demand. Muda here. So if this is too much work asked of the system,
underutilization.
this is well, typically this is just described as waste.
Right.
Full stop.
Okay. Right.
So underutilization, yes, because you're wasting your effort. And finally, Mura is the big picture.
Yeah.
So the Mura is the unevenness of demand. Yeah. So that's the whole picture. So overburden, waste, and unevenness of flow. And what we find is that they kind of spill into each other. So the unevenness of flow means that you've got overburden, and then you start generating waste because you can't handle the flow. So it all kind of matches up. So an improvement in one area will often help the others. So I'll just be very gentle. So very important to talk about the wastes of lean, and we'll get back to this and what it means in the software development context later. I've seen this, downtime, easy way of remembering it. So thanks to Steve Mitchell for sharing that with me.
You're right.
So you used to see 7 wastes in lean. These days we talk about 8, the extra one being non-utilised talent. Norman Bodek says there's 9. Everyone likes an extra one, which is management resistance to change, that he likes. But
It doesn't fit into the acronym.
downtime. So we'll go through these in a bit more detail and what they'll mean, but I think they're kind of self-evident. Defects, non-utilised talent, they're all stuff where we think we'll be losing out. So this is the book, you might have seen it on my desk. This book was written in about 2003, written on the screen. It's as relevant today as it was yesterday. I think some of the terms around some of the technical practices have changed, but all in all, it's like it was written yesterday. I mean, it really is. And when I'm talking to other coaches about the knowledge in the world about agile and ways of working and software development, it's kind of interesting that we've known this stuff for 15 years, but for me, for now, we're still just approaching, addressing it, and taking these kind of techniques on board. So the Popinjects they've worked in manufacturing a lot. I think Mary worked in she worked 3M. Yeah, they're doing video cassettes, and then they moved in. So
But just on the adoption issue, I think it actually goes back to that point about management being resistant to change.
yeah,
Because removing waste out of your system has knock-on effects, of course, for the rest of the organisation.
Yeah.
And I remember being in some Scrum training years ago, and it was hilarious when half the project managers realised that if their teams actually did proper Scrum, they'd be out of a job. And so you get that whole self-protection issue coming up, and
Yes.
all that usual big corporate nonsense.
yes. And there's some theories that we'll kind of go into later about the impact of this way of working and why it upsets kind of the existing model. Certainly for me, some of the stuff is counterintuitive to managers as they know it, particularly stuff like resource utilisation. When they focus on. So we might talk a little about queuing theory later, which kind of nicks into that. So the book, not big, it's a good book, still relevant today. So they took all their understanding, the Popinjects, and they came up with 7, because 7's always a good number for people to remember. That's they said. But what steps would you take for lean software development, and how is their application of these in the real world kind of progressed? So, in eliminating waste, obviously it's lean. Waste is everything. Amplify learning. Decide late as possible. Deliver as fast as possible, which sounds obvious, but the way that you might want to do that is probably less obvious. Empowering the team, build integrity and see the whole. So, yeah, there's nothing.
Decide as late as possible.
Decide as late as possible. You don't want to say that. That's
No, you said that.
so. We'll pick that up, because deciding as late as possible is interesting. So these 7 things to address come with 20 tools basically. So for each of those, if we're eliminating waste, what are the tools that we need to use to address that problem? So we'll go through them, but we'll talk. We won't go through all of these individually at the moment. We'll probably go through at the end step by step, and then if you want to stop and talk about any in particular, then we'll kind of pick that up and just explore what that would mean. But there's a set of tools for each of the steps. I think these things are all based on proper reasoning, academic research, real world experience. So it's not theoretical, just theoretical, it's practical application. So if we talk about waste, seeing waste, so here's the waste of software development. There's Matt. On the other side?
Yeah, we are not able to see.
Oh, right, okay, cool. Right, okay. Oh, sorry, I'll just have to move my sensitive mouse with me. Sorry, I didn't see you there. Right, so defects are defects. Most of them map directly, but there's a couple of ones. Extra features of production, self-evident, non-utilised talent is fine. Transport, cost of moving things around. Cost for us would be task switching. So it's 20%, I think, is the figure for swapping from task to task that you take to your brain to re-establish context. Partially done work. So for us, inventory is partially done work, and where would we see that?
By not releasing a prod.
Not releasing to prod. Stuff waiting in queues, being tested, waiting for releases.
And it kind of relates to extra features too, because inventory can almost relate to unused, even if it's in prod, stuff that the customer never uses.
Yeah, because we're carrying that.
Yeah.
Well,
as
and that
well.
lack of team synchronisation contributes as well.
Yeah.
We'll see them all go through. Motion was one that I struggled initially until it kind of boiled down. It's handoffs. So that would be the time taken for us to get information, because that's the currency that we deal in. So finding the guy in the security team who needs to help us to get the thing across the line, passing it over to them, and then giving them the knowledge to be able to do their job to give it back. So that every time there's a handoff, that's we're actually moving information around. So that's the way that we're thinking it. And extra processes. Do we need that sign off? Maybe, maybe not.
What is the difference between motion and transport?
So transport is more filling up the inventory. So it's a good question, because they are similar. So normally they would think of transport and the concept of lean manufacturing as moving things around externally,
Moving
like
stuff
parts
around,
and
yeah.
stock and all this. Whereas motion would be in the factory, on the factory floor. I have to do this now. I have to go over there. So it's probably, it is similar, but I guess it's a question of scale in this case. They're thinking of the cost of moving as opposed to, well, it's all got cost, isn't it? So that's waste basically. So the first step for us to address the waste is to see the waste, to call that out, and that's why understanding these things as waste are important, because if we can say I'm waiting, that's a cause of waste. What do we do? So the tool is, once you can see the waste, is value stream mapping. So they never look nice, the value stream maps, but this could be a valuable exercise for us. If we have a repeatable process that we're doing again and again, for example, the path to production, the sign-offs, the handovers, what are the steps? So I think Taichione says, if you can't describe to me your process of how you get things done, then you don't know what you're doing. You know, so the idea is that we know that there's these steps that we have to do to get through. Where's the value add? First of all, so what if these are the value add, then how long does it take to get there? So you're basically making a kind of utilization, like a value chart that says how much waste there's in the system by counting the amount of time items in the system are in a wait state between the value add activities. If we can identify where the biggest weights are, then we can look at reducing those, and that by extension reducing waste. And that's why handoffs are very expensive, because often it results in a queue as well as a transfer of knowledge. So let's go on to the next one. Amplify learning. So the 4 tools in this area: feedback. So Scrum process is good for this because it's an iterative loop with a feedback mechanism. So that's good for us, but what we'll find is in the external organisation that's not the case. So I don't know if you've ever worked for a company where they don't seem to learn. So in Peter Senge's fifth discipline, he talks about the learning organisation, and that's because you'll see the project. It didn't go too well. We'll have a big PIR at the end of the project. Everyone learns a lesson, then we all disband the team, and then we go on to a new project where we'll make the same mistakes. So we're just not learning, keeping that feedback coming through the system. Synchronization, this is something that we've started to talk about, starting at the same time. So starting and finishing at the same time, very important for us in our efforts. I think when we had the feature kickoff, did that
Oh, yeah.
that was better.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we're doing a piece of work. We're all doing it. We're all going to start at the same time, even if we share the information. So synchronization is something that we're kind of starting to try to bring in, and set-based development. So this is probably something that's quite relevant to us at the moment. You've got multiple options.
Yeah. Build them all.
Build them all.
Yep.
Pick the ones that are working, and then take them forward.
Yes, and we're having struggles with that actually, because we want to try that out and we're getting resistance because other parts of the business want to do the whole BDUF thing, whereas we're saying no, let's experiment.
Yes. So this is a call out. You know, this is something that we'll need to escalate to our management. You know, had that was mentioned this morning by Lee. If you're finding it difficult, use the leverage of the authority of the organisation, because this is the way of working. We can't tell you what the right thing is until we do it. So maybe this is one for us to call out now, to say this is the approach we'd like to take. We're looking for support to do that. So that's only number 2. Decide as late as possible. So, Karuna, why would that be a good idea?
It's strange to me, decide as late as possible. Yeah, because I was of the notion, like I was thinking we have to decide as early as possible so that, we can know, what can go wrong and
Okay.
we can decide.